Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello students, this is the last topic of your chapter, which is fluid friction. As the name tells you that this is the friction that is brought in by the fluids. You must have tried this, already. You have swimming pools near you or you have bathtubs. Try walking in bathtubs. What do you feel? It is much difficult than walking on roads, right? Which means that fluids also provide friction. It is difficult to move in liquids, right? So fluids are also providing friction. This was a typical example. Now you know that air is very light and thin. The air around us, the atmosphere, basically is very light and thin. It is much less dense than our bodies, than our objects. Air is very thin. So yet it exerts frictional force on objects moving through it. When you walk on a road and there is wind blowing, it is very difficult for you to walk in the opposite direction of the wind, because that wind tries to stop you, right? That wind applies some force due to which you are not able to walk very fast. This is because air also applies friction. When air applies friction, obviously fluids will also apply friction. Fluids are much more dense than air, much denser. Similarly, water and other liquids exert force of friction when objects move through them. This is what I was talking about. When you try to move, when you try to walk in a bathtub, it is very difficult as compared to you walking on land, because fluids also provide friction. In scientific term, liquids are known as fluids, right? The frictional force exerted by fluids is also called as drag. Basically, you can say that when you walk in a bathtub or you walk on a beach, you experience drag. That is the frictional force provided by liquids, provided by fluids. Right, students? Now, frictional force of on an object in a fluid depends on, when an object is in a fluid, what are the factors on which friction depends? First of all, its speed with respect to the fluid. For example, you have water, and its speed is x in this direction, right? Now, if you are moving in this direction only, it will be easier for you to walk because the water will be pushing you forward with itself. If you are walking in the same direction, it will be easier for you to walk. But this was case 1. In case 2, you are walking against the speed of the water, then you will experience very good amount of friction. In the case 1, the friction is much less, the water helps you to move. But here, in the case 2, when you are moving opposite to the water, when you are trying to move towards the water and water is flowing in your opposite direction, then you notice that the friction that you experience is much higher. So we can say that the amount of friction depends upon the speed with respect to the fluid, right? Then also, if you have speed higher than water, if the speed of man, this is the man's speed, is much more than the speed of water, then you can move. But if the speed of the man is less than water, then you cannot moving water, because the water will not let you move. Water will exert so much pressure on you, so much friction on you, that you will not be able to move in that water. So speed is an important factor. Then the shape of the object. Now students, this is a very important factor basically. You have seen that fish and other aquatic animals have specific shapes, due to which they are able to move in water in any direction they want to, and at a good speed as well. You have seen sharks, dolphins, all of them have a similar structure, so that they can cut through the water. They can create space between water and let the water move on its own. They can cut through water, and hence they move very speedily in water. Aquatic animals have such features on their bodies. So shape of an object also matters a lot. Now, whenever we create a submarine or other airplanes or anything, we require some shapes that will help us in transportation. We require some kind of shapes, and these shapes are completely inspired from nature itself. I will be talking about that also. So this is one kind of factor, that shape of the object is also a good factor related to fluid friction. Then the nature of the fluid. I'll give you a typical example. There is some water in a beaker and there is some honey. First beaker has water and the second beaker has honey. Right. Now you try to move a spoon through water. You are stirring the water with the help of a spoon. Now what do you see? The water will be stirred easily. When you introduce the same spoon in honey, it will be very difficult for you to move that spoon at the same speed because the honey provides much more friction. So it also depends upon the nature of the fluid. As honey is very dense, it is very difficult to move that spoon in that honey, right? But it is easier to move the spoon in water because the water is less dense, right? Now students, let us talk about shapes. When objects move through fluids, they have to overcome friction acting upon them. Only then they will be able to walk. The body is required to overcome the friction that they are facing. Only then they can move in the water bodies or in any medium. In this process, they lose energy. Whenever they try to overcome friction, obviously, when you're moving against something, you will be using your energy, which means that you're losing your energy, right? When you move towards the wind, the wind is coming towards you and you're moving in the opposite direction of wind, you will require force to move in that direction. So you are losing some energy. Efforts are made to minimize friction. So what do we do in this case? We basically have to reduce friction so as to enhance our movement, right? We should decrease friction somehow. So objects are given special shapes. These shapes are inspired from nature. As I told you, we provide specific shapes to our equipments so that we can obtain great efficiency from them. Their bodies must have evolved to shapes which would make them lose energy in overcoming friction. The natural birds and other creatures have some specific shapes. They are able to fly through the air because they have those shapes, and this is because of evolution after a longer time, that they have evolved into some creatures which have different kinds of shapes which can cut through the air or water so that they can fly or move very easily. So getting inspired from these only, we have made airplanes which have similar shapes, right? We have airplanes which are shaped like birds, which is the same concept that the airplanes also cut through the air, and hence we are now at a stage that we have developed so many modes of transportation. Due to this inspiration only, we take inspiration from nature, and hence we invent new objects which help us in our daily life. And hence here also we are reducing friction by using some specific kind of shapes. We are trying to reduce friction only, right students? So this was all about friction.